Have you ever wondered what happened to the women who chose love for fallen angels over obedience to God? Get ready to uncover how these heavenly beings turned against their divine purpose and how their human lovers paid the ultimate price. You'll see why their giant offspring, the Nephilim, were wiped out by a cataclysmic flood and how the Archangel Michael intervened to restore order. But the real shocker, what he did to punish these women afterward. Stay with us as we reveal how their souls became sirens, forever haunting myths and legends even today. You know how a single glance can change everything? This is the story of the most disastrous case of love at first sight in history. Picture this. In heaven, angels were carrying out their divine duties, singing praises, watching over creation, ensuring everything remained in balance. Their purpose was simple: serve God. But then something happened that should never have been. These powerful beings looked down at earth and saw something that captivated them. Human women. Not just any women, but those whose beauty was unlike anything in the heavenly realm. Their beauty was real, raw, and above all, human. Here's where things took a turn. These angels, once immune to earthly desires, felt something foreign, a pull they couldn't resist. Every glance downward deepened the yearning inside them, dimming their celestial glow as thoughts they had never known before flooded their minds. Below, life carried on as usual. Women laughing, working, loving, completely unaware that they were being watched by heavenly eyes. Yet something in the air shifted. An unseen force wrapped around them like an impending storm, electric, intoxicating, and dangerous. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something to shatter the ordinary. The angels struggled. They knew the risks, knew they were bound to their heavenly duty, but with each passing day, the temptation grew stronger. Questions began to form in their minds, questions no angel had ever dared ask. What if we could feel what humans feel? What if we could love like they do? The devotion they were meant to give only to God now stirred for something else. More angels joined in, watching the earth, their willpower crumbling little by little. They were at a breaking point. Stay loyal to their divine purpose, or surrender to this irresistible longing. They had witnessed the birth of stars, stood before the throne of God, yet now they were willing to throw it all away for love. Little did they know, their reckless choice would unleash chaos upon both heaven and earth. Some rules are not meant to be broken, no matter how enticing the temptation. The moment these angels stepped onto earth, something otherworldly happened, but not in a good way. Imagine the most breathtaking person you've ever seen. Now multiply that by 1,000. That's how these fallen angels appeared when they arrived. They didn't just walk, they glided. Their voices weren't just words, they were melodies. Light itself seemed to embrace them, making everything else appear dull in comparison. When they entered villages, people froze. It was impossible not to stare, like looking directly at the sun, painful but mesmerizing. For the women, it wasn't just attraction, it was an enchantment. These weren't ordinary strangers. They were perfection incarnate. Their skin shimmered like moonlight, their eyes held the depth of the universe, and when they smiled, reality itself seemed to shift. But as the saying goes, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Something was off. Their beauty was almost unnatural, their smiles hiding secrets as deep as the abyss. Their eyes, though stunning, carried an ancient weight, as if they had seen lifetimes unfold. The women were drawn in, helplessly captivated. How could they resist beings who radiated heavenly light, who knew their hearts before they even spoke, who promised them things no mortal ever could? But here's where it gets eerie. The more time these women spent with the fallen angels, the more they changed. They took on an unearthly glow, their perception of the world shifting. Normal life no longer satisfied them. Ordinary men seemed plain in comparison to these celestial beings. The fallen ones knew exactly what they were doing. They chose the most captivating women, the ones who had unknowingly caught their eye from heaven. Using their supernatural allure, they became the embodiment of every fantasy these women had ever imagined. It was a romance straight out of a fairy tale, but with a dark twist. Each time an angel took a human wife, an invisible ripple spread through creation. These unions weren't just unnatural, they were forbidden. And the offspring that came from them, that's where the nightmare truly began. Let's talk about the children of these unions, the Nephilim. Imagine a baby being born, but instead of growing at a normal pace, they just keep expanding, stronger, larger, more powerful. These weren't ordinary kids. They were giants, capable of crushing mountains, their appetites capable of devouring entire villages. When a Nephilim moved, the ground trembled. When they spoke, their voices roared like thunder. They inherited their father's strength and their mother's emotions, but lacked the wisdom to control either. Think of a tantrum-throwing toddler, but now imagine that toddler the size of a building. Terrifying, right? Cities lived in constant dread. Ordinary humans were powerless against them. The Nephilim took what they desired, consumed whatever they pleased, and left nothing but destruction in their wake. Some towered like the trees, others even taller. And worse, they were not just enormous, but intelligent, making them even deadlier. In heaven, God watched as his creation descended into chaos. His perfect world was being overrun by creatures who should never have existed. His heart burned with righteous fury as he saw his beloved humans cowering in fear, praying for salvation. That's when the archangels, heaven's fiercest warriors, prepared for battle. But even for them, this fight was unlike any they had faced before. The Nephilim were not mere demons. They had angelic blood coursing through their veins. Michael, Gabriel, and the other archangels gathered their forces. They knew charging in recklessly was futile. These beings were stronger than anything they had encountered before. But when you serve God, there's always a plan. And this time, the plan was beyond anything the world had ever seen. When the archangels realized that even their might wasn't enough, God himself intervened. He unleashed a judgment so vast it would alter the earth forever, a great flood that would wash away the corruption that had spread unchecked. What followed was a battle of unimaginable proportions. Heaven's armies clashed with the Nephilim, while the storm of divine wrath gathered above them. The sky split apart with blinding lightning, thunder roared like a war drum, and the rain began to fall. For the first time, the Nephilim, these invincible giants, felt something new: fear. What came next would be a lesson to all, angels, humans, and Nephilim alike. Some boundaries are never meant to be crossed. Some mistakes cannot be undone. But before we continue, have you subscribed to our channel yet? If not, now's the perfect time. We bring you fascinating Bible content every week, diving deep into Scripture and the mysteries within. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button now. Have you ever watched storm clouds gather, so thick and dark that day turns into night? Now imagine that, but 1,000,000 times worse. That's how it began. The moment God decided enough was enough. The sky didn't just darken, it became black as ink. The air turned so heavy that even breathing felt like a struggle. At first, no one thought much of it. Rain was normal, right? But this was something else entirely. The raindrops were massive, thick and heavy, like the very tears of heaven itself. They didn't simply fall, they crashed down with unstoppable force. Hour after hour, day after day, the rain never let up. No breaks, no mercy, just endless water pouring from an enraged sky. The mighty Nephilim, the fearsome giants who had once terrorized the earth, finally looked afraid. For the first time, these unstoppable beings who could crush boulders with their bare hands were powerless. The floodwaters kept rising, consuming everything. Desperate, the giants scrambled to the highest mountains, but no peak was high enough. Their incredible strength was useless now. The very world they had once ruled had turned against them. Screams echoed everywhere. People begged for mercy, crying out to heaven, but it was too late. The fallen angels who had once descended to earth in defiance watched helplessly as their children, the powerful hybrids they had created, fought against the inevitable. But nothing could be done. This was divine judgment, and no force in heaven or on earth could stop it. Amidst the chaos, a single vessel remained afloat, Noah's Ark. Imagine being inside, hearing the storm rage beyond its walls, feeling the waves toss it like a toy in an angry sea. Within that ark were the only humans and animals destined to survive. They could hear the cries of those perishing outside, but there was nothing they could do. This was God's plan, and they had no choice but to trust it. The floodwaters climbed higher. First, the fields disappeared, then the forests. The hills were swallowed, and finally, even the tallest mountains vanished beneath the endless waves. The Nephilim, the mighty beings who had once been feared by all, were now powerless against the flood. Their enormous strength couldn't save them from drowning. From their chains, the fallen angels could only watch as everything they had built crumbled. Their children, their human wives, the cities they had helped construct, all were wiped away. The corrupted world was being washed clean. For 40 days and 40 nights, the sky unleashed its wrath. When the downpour finally ceased, the earth was unrecognizable, just a vast, endless ocean. No mountains, no valleys, no civilizations, only water stretching as far as the eye could see. The only sign of life was Noah's Ark, drifting alone on the endless sea. And then, at last, the waters began to recede. As the waves pulled back, a new world emerged. Everything the Nephilim had built was gone. It was as if the earth had been given a fresh start, a reset unlike anything before. But for some, the true punishment was only just beginning. You might think the worst was over when the flood finally retreated, but for certain souls, the nightmare had only begun. Remember those women who had fallen in love with the fallen angels? They survived the flood, but perhaps that wasn't a mercy after all. Imagine giving your heart to someone perfect, someone powerful, only to watch them dragged away in chains. That was their fate. Their angelic husbands, once so mighty, so beautiful, were now imprisoned in darkness. Some were bound in deep valleys, others trapped in spiritual prisons. They could no longer protect their wives, hold them, or even whisper words of comfort. The women were left alone, forced to face the consequences of what they had done. Some broke down completely. Imagine realizing that your own choices had helped bring about the destruction of the world. The weight of that guilt crushed them. They collapsed to their knees, sobbing, pleading for God's forgiveness. They wept until they had no more tears left to cry. But not all of them were remorseful. Take Nama, for example. Stunning, proud Nama. Even after everything, she refused to bow. She had been intoxicated by her own beauty and power, using them to lead others astray. And even now she stood tall, unwilling to admit she had been wrong. Her pride became her own prison. And God's punishment? It was both fitting and merciless. These women were transformed into sirens, the haunting creatures known for luring sailors to their doom, cursed to be forever beautiful, but forever deadly. Just like the angels they had once loved, They would now lead others into destruction, just as they themselves had been led astray. The psychological torment was unbearable. These women had to live with the crushing reality of their actions, knowing that their love had helped unravel the world. Some lost their minds entirely, overcome with grief. Others became hollow shells of who they had once been. The weight of their sin was simply too much to bear. And their fallen angel husbands? Still chained, still imprisoned, they could feel everything their wives endured. Every ounce of pain, every scream, every moment of despair. It reached them in their cells of darkness. But they were powerless to help, forced to suffer in silence. Meanwhile, the angels who had remained faithful to God were given a new purpose: to watch over this cleansed earth, ensuring that nothing like this ever happened again. They observed from a distance, never interfering, only watching. They had learned their lesson. Some boundaries must never be crossed, no matter how tempting the reason. They witnessed the sirens, their former sisters-in-law, singing their cursed songs, forever doomed to be both beautiful and damned. They saw humanity slowly rebuild, trying to forget the horrors of the flood. A new chapter had begun, but the scars of the past still remained. The faithful angels kept their distance now. They had seen firsthand what happened when divine laws were broken. They knew some things could never be undone. But what if I told you there was another battle? A secret fight between two of the most powerful beings to ever exist, Michael and Lucifer. And what were they fighting over? The body of Moses. Yes, that Moses, the same one who parted the Red Sea. But this wasn't just any battle. It was so significant, so dangerous, that it was hidden away in a 3,000-year-old scripture most people don't even know exists. Why did Lucifer want Moses' body so badly? What made Michael so furious that he had to personally confront the Prince of Darkness? Trust me, what happened next changed everything we know about these beings. Click the video on your screen right now. You won't believe what really happened between heaven's greatest warrior and its most infamous traitor. This is one Bible story they definitely didn't teach you in Sunday school.